This week I'd like to take a look at a 2008 printing of a Thompson Chain-Reference Bible in black genuine leather. This is the New American Standard Edition. Unfortunately, these days all the Thompson Chain-Reference Bibles are in red letter, that is, the words of Christ are in red. In the old days, back in the 80s, you could order them at least in black letter text. This is genuine leather Levant grain. As I mentioned, this is the 2008 printing. They're currently not available. Thompson chains are currently not available in the New American Standard, but they will be again in the April time frame. This is the way the box looked like. I bought this one in 2009. That was the ISBN at the time. We'll take a look at the back, which is the sales pitch on the Thompson chain. You can freeze that if you want to read any of that. It is Smyth sewn, Kirkbride Publishing Company in Indianapolis, Indiana. And to give you a sense for the size of it, we'll do some comparisons. So this is our book for today, Thompson Chain-Reference, also called a TCR. This is a Zondervan giant print reference in the New American Standard. The one on the bottom, our Bible for today, the TCR, is the 1977 New American Standard edition. The one on top is a 95. So Thompson chain's quite a lot larger than that. This is a 1977 McCabe New American Standard side column reference Bible. Nice little emblem on it. And the SCR is not quite as wide as a Thompson chain, but roughly as thick and as tall. This is a large print ultra thin from Foundation Publications. Mine is, when was this printed? This is a 2013 printing in black genuine leather. So the large print ultra thin is a little bit taller, about as wide, much thinner. The book is 9 3/8 inches tall, 6 13/16 inches wide, and it's 1 7/8 inches thick. So now we're going to take a look at the inside. To look at the layout, you can see that it's a 2 narrow column format. Each column is 39 millimeters wide. Distance between this outer line and this outer line is 83 millimeters. On a closely spaced line, where the letters are very close together, like this one, I count 31 to 32 characters per line. There are as many as 60 lines per page from the top to bottom. That's the case on that page. Page dimensions are: the height is 228 millimeters, that's 9 inches. The width is 6.46 inches, or 164 millimeters wide. Margins in this Bible, in my particular printing anyway, vary quite a bit. But at the top, from this line to the upper edge, is in the ballpark 11.5 to 13.5 millimeter. The bottom varies as well. It's around 17 from there down, from the bottom of the text notes down. The inner margin can be as much as 38, now including these chain references in the margin in that distance, so it's from the line left. And then from the line right, the outer margin is 40 to 41 millimeters. This font is about a 9-point font. The line height is 3.2 millimeters. That's 9.1 points. So that is an adequate distance. It seems properly spaced. Verse numbers are here in the text. You see it's a verse-by-verse format. It is not line matched, and that's not very clear here, but we'll show a few pages where the lack of line matching is pretty significant. New American Standard typically is printed with translator-supplied words, that is, words translators supply to smooth the meaning, in an italic font, and that's true here. I would say that this ink is dark gray rather than black. There isn't quite as much contrast here as there could be. These numbered references in the side column, there are apparently 100,000 or more of those types of references in the side, and the font here inside is about 6.5 points. They point to the index of chain references in the back, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. Paper, the sheet thickness here is about 35.3 microns. I estimate the paper weight is 32 GSM. It has a waxy surface. Perhaps you can see that. So you do have to take care with this Bible with your lamp page eye angle, not to get that glare in your eye as you're reading the Bible. It's white, and there's a bit of a tinge of gray to it. That is, when I compare it with a really white piece of paper, it has a slight grayish tinge to it. There is some fairly heavy show-through, and perhaps this is where we can talk a bit about line matching. I'll show you page 1382 as an example of that. Okay, so here you're looking at red with black behind it. The show-through there is fairly extreme. Look here, for instance. There you can see that it's not line matched. You can see the line on the back side coming through, and it really causes a confused look to the characters. It's hard on the eyes. What I tend to do is put a piece of paper, perhaps black construction paper is what I often use, and that seems to help a bit. Print non-uniformity is kind of mild in the black. As I mentioned, the black's not quite as dark as it could be, but it doesn't vary greatly. However, in the red, print non-uniformity can be quite striking. I'll show you a couple of pages here. We'll go to 1273 and 1275. 1275 on the right, 1273 on the left. And you can see that this is considerably darker on the right than on the left. It does actually get fainter than what you see there on the left in places. It's not horrible, but red seems to have more problems getting uniform than black does. There are no book introductions proper in this Bible. Each book does begin on its own separate page, as you see Matthew does there. The book titles are typically here in the outer corners of the pages, and book contents are given there as well. So we're in Matthew 1 verse 22 here at the beginning on the left hand page, and then the last verse to appear on the right hand page is 3:13. There are headings both at the top of the page and inside the text. So you get double headings here. They are in an italic font, and it's about 9 points as well. Chapter numbers. The chapters are given here in kind of an all caps, all bold font that looks to be about a 9.5 point font. And the first word in each chapter is in a bold character as well, with the first letter being extremely large. And we mentioned the deeply sad situation here where the words of Christ are in red. After the end of the book of Revelation, you come to the Thompson Comprehensive Helps, which are 9 sections, and we'll take a look at them. First section you come to, I should leave that there because I'm going to need to flip back, is called the General Index. Now this is useful if you're trying to find information on a particular topic. For instance, let's say we wanted to look at what these chain references say on the topic of freedom. Here it says see 2134 to 2135. So what does that mean? that refers to the index of chain-reference topics, which is the very next reference. And if we look forward here to 2134 and 2135, we see liberty references there, and then the mission of Christ to proclaim freedom. You'll notice that some of the references here in the chain topics just give you references there, and others actually quote the verse to you, and I find it much more useful when they quote the verse to you. And so that's what you find in 2134 and 2135. Now, more typically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be reading the Bible, and you're going to see a reference over here. You're going to read cubits in the text, and you're going to see a reference over here to cubits. Now, cubits actually isn't in the New American Standard, but it is in the notes at the bottom of the page. They use the term cubit there. So, cubits is an 897. That means I go to the index of chain topics here, and then I go to numeral 897 in it. And so I'm at 897 now, and what does it tell me about a cubit? Well, again, here it gives me a number of references, the last one of which was that verse that we just looked at in Revelation. So I can read, I can go back forward in the Bible to any of those verses. Now, had I been lucky and chosen a topic like 884 Creator, then they would have spelled out the verses for me. For some reason, of course, it would be a huge book if they included the entire text of the references in the back for all of these different topics. But one wonders what principles guided them to say cubits is not important and other things are. I guess it's pretty obvious that Creator is, but it's not so obvious in all circumstances. Second major thing here then after the general index, which is in a 7.5 point font and spans 28 pages, is the index of chain topics. The index of chain topics has 4,451 chain topics in it. And this is also a 7.5 point font. And we mentioned that sometimes you get quotations, and then sometimes you just get a list of references. Still inside the index of chain topics, we kind of have a break, and we have an addenda. So this was added at some point during the history of the development of the Thompson chain, where they came up with new chain topics. And of course, since everything is numbered sequentially earlier, they just had to add on. They couldn't rearrange their earlier sequence very easily. After the addenda, you come to a section on Bible readings. It begins with 4130 on page 1866. And it's a wide range of subjects for general use in private and public services. So this is sort of tailored to devotional readings. After the Bible readings, there's this section, which is outlined studies of the Bible. It starts with a graphic of 7 editions of the Divine Law. It begins with entry 4219, and it's mostly graphical in nature. Here's sort of a family tree of Bible translations, starting with the originals, going forward. English, mostly the English versions. They do not have the English Standard Version in this graphic, so it doesn't go quite that far forward. After this section on Bible studies, which includes the material that one would normally find in a book introduction, for each book in the Bible you have a section like this. One on the Epistle to the Hebrews, author and date, purpose, keyword, and then sort of an outline, which they call a synopsis. So that's in the Bible reading section, outline studies of the Bible section rather. Then we come to the character studies. So they have studies of various characters such as Noah, this portion. It begins on page 4289, page 1936 with entry 4289. We come then, after the character studies, to Bible Harmonies and Illustrated Studies. You see there are a lot of graphics in here. This is a tree of Moses' life. Journeys of the children of Israel. A tree that has to do with Christ's life. Harmony of the Gospels, which goes on for several pages. Journeys of Jesus in his early life. And so this is the sort of thing one finds there. Distances from Jerusalem, prodigal son, all kinds of various studies here. On page 2015 we come to G. Frederick Owen's Archaeological Supplement, which contains archaeological information, the Rosetta Stone, image of that. At the end of this, on entry 4451, which is just before the concordance, we come to a Hebrew calendar, which can be quite useful as you're reading the Old Testament. Then there is a concordance for the New American Standard Version. This is 113 pages long, beginning on page 2094. It's in about a 7.5 point font, and it spans 113 pages. The entries are in all caps and bold like this, and then the context phrases are in a list, so they're not in a paragraph format as you often find in older King James Bibles. It's in a list like that makes things relatively easy to find. After the concordance, we come to the index to the Scripture Atlas. The index itself is 12 pages long. It's in this 2-column format. Text is 9 points. This is how to find place in the maps, if you know the name of a place. So the Siloam Channel is on map 9 in the grid E3. So that's how you would use it after the map index. And so here's the grid, the numbered portion and the lettered portion. So E3 on this map. This is map 9, but that's how you would find it. There's 3, there's E. 14 maps, they're all by Kirkbride. They're fairly detailed. There's a semi-gloss finish there, so you can see if I hold the page in certain ways, light from the lamp or the window will come through and reflect off it. It's not as shiny as some that I've seen. Some of the maps do go into the gutter. I know people don't like that on their maps, but these do. Alright, so maps, fairly colorful, somewhat detailed. Here you can see the sewing. If you look into the gutter there, you'll be able to see the lines of stitching. You can guarantee to yourself that you have a sewn book. Right, we come to the end of the maps, and then we're at the other end of the paste down binder. It is a paste down. It has some sort of a vinyl type synthetic to the genuine leather cover. Then it has this decorative gilt line that runs around the outer edge. It is only genuine leather, that's the softer under leather, and it's been impressed with the grain to make it look like it's the outer grain. It's not very flexible because it's this paste down construction. It has yellow and black head and tail bands, and the ribbon is decently wide. It's 9 millimeters wide and it's 328 millimeters long. I think I would prefer it maybe 10 millimeters longer than this, but this is certainly adequate. Because it has a sewn binding, it lies open fairly well, but it's not exactly flat. You can see you have a bit of a curve here. Alright, so now we're back at the beginning of the book. You can see that we have the same gilt line here, the same synthetic. We have a couple of pages of cardstock, maybe 3, and we come to the first title page, second title page, which mentions Frank Charles Thompson. I drew a little chart here based on information I could find on the internet about the editor of this book. He was born in Elmira, New York, here in the United States in 1858. He was a minister in the Methodist Episcopal Church starting in 1881. The first edition of the Thompson Chain-Reference Bible, which was a King James, of course, was in 1908. Then in 1913 he set up a business partnership with a guy named B.B. Kirkbride to distribute the Thompson Chain-Reference Bible. The Reverend Thompson is buried in Woodlawn Cemetery in Santa Monica, California. He died in May of 1840. Here's the copyright page. So there's all the copyright information here, then information about the New American Standard Bible. I understand that the New American Standard version of the Thompson Chain is going to be available again in the April 2019 time frame, and I've also heard rumors that it's going to continue to contain the 1977 text. I prefer the 1977 text. I think it's more literal than the 1995 update, and doubtless will be more literal than the 2020 update. Comprehensive Bible Helps, Forward to the New American Standard, Principles of Translation, Abbreviations and Special Marks, The Analytic and Synthetic Systems of Bible Study, 2 pages on that, explanation of the margins, indices, and journey maps, practical advantages, so why they think you should like their Bible. Nice little river here, drawn opposite of Genesis. So occasionally, in addition to the chain references like these, the numbered ones, which I showed you how to use earlier, you get parallel passage references like that. Sometimes a chain reference gives you the next reference in the chain. Here's some more parallel passages. Here's parallel passage to Hebrews over here. One of the things the Thompson chain does not do very well is in the New Testament. It does not do a very good job of showing you where quotations are from. Here's an easy one, honor your father and your mother. One of the neat things about the New American Standard Bible is that quotations of the Old Testament presented in the New Testament are in all caps, so they're easy to find. But there's nothing here in the margin that will tell you how to find those. And I think this is probably, you can see that this is another example of quite a lot of show-through coming through. It's another newsprint effect sort of page. I've moved us forward into Revelation. This is the 4th chapter, and it's in red letter, printed fairly faintly. And you can see quite a lot of show-through coming in from the next page, which is printed on black characters. Quite a lot in between the lines here. So you have a faint gray, a faint red on a gray background. And a couple of things you can do to try to solve that problem. One would be to slide a piece of white paper, this is typing paper, underneath and see how that improves things. And I think it does help a bit. Noticed doing these Bible reviews that we're all physiologically quite different. I like narrow columns, but I see comments by a lot of people that say they really can't stand columns this narrow. Some people, the red letters actually hurt their eyes, like me, and others don't seem to mind them at all. It may be that white works well for you to try to cut down on that show-through. Black actually works better for me. I like that look better. So the right column there has black underneath it. The left is just the normal white look. White on the previous page. So what I tend to do is I tend to put black construction paper under the page that I'm looking at, and that really seems to help with the show-through and decrease the amount of noise that my brain has to deal with when reading the text. So now we're going to do some font comparisons. First, let's just take a moment and look at this font. I like the line spacing, particularly with the narrow column, the line spacing about the same height as the font itself. Really works fairly well. You don't have to exercise a lot of discipline to keep your eyes on the line as you move across that very narrow column. The tracking looks good too. The words, the characters in the words are not too awfully close to each other. So let's compare this Thompson Chain font to the ultra thin reference font here from Levant, which is on the right. Levant font is considerably larger. Both have show-through, as you can see here. Levant has a wider column, I think. There's the old 77 McCabe side column reference. It's a bit hard to get them both on the same page here. Let's zoom out a bit. Much larger font on the right. Also has a show-through problem. You didn't have that problem in the 2002 printing of the New American Standard side column reference on the heavy paper, but you do have it on most of the editions. Zoom back in to show the next one, which is this giant print reference from Zondervan, which is really also has problems with its paper and show-through, but it's really a beautiful font. This is from a group in Battleground, Washington State in the United States. It's Blue Heron, I think is the name of the company that makes it. Blue Heron Bookcraft made that font on the right, and it's really very pleasant. Some people swear by the Thompson chain system, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I can use it, it seems okay, but I prefer the standard New American Standard version references, which are quite detailed. But the reason I bought this Thompson Chain-Reference was because of the 77 text. It's one of the few editions that actually contains it. And you might be asking yourself, well, how does the 77 text differ from the 95 update? Well, there are a few ways, one of which is illustrated here in Psalm 71:17. O God, thou hast taught me from my youth. So it's using thous and thys, and I still declare thy wondrous deeds. The 95 update decided to modernize that away. And so, O God, you have taught me from my youth, and I still declare your wondrous deeds. So one difference between the 77 and the 95 is the elimination of archaic language. The 77 tends to be a bit more literal in my scoring, and one of the reasons for that is that it has a more accurate reflection of the Greek. I scored only the New Testament, of course. I don't know Hebrew. And I chose 200 verses at random, and a number of those verses had an initial conjunction, and it had a pronoun. So this is the 77 in Mark 6:1, and it says, "And he went out from there, and he came to his hometown." If you look at the 95 update, it does not reflect the Greek text quite as accurately as the 77 did. So here's Mark 6:1 in the 95 update, and it says Jesus went out from there and came into his hometown. So you've dropped the initial conjunction, which is in the Greek, and then without telling anyone, there's no note here, they've replaced he with Jesus. A third type of example can be seen in the end of Luke's Gospel, where the 77 update, I think it was sort of a trend in that time frame, the 77 version put doubt on some of the language that's included in Luke 24. For instance, here in verse 36, it ends with "in their midst," and then there's a footnote that says, "Some ancient manuscripts insert, and he says to them, 'Peace be to you.'" Then down in verse 40, they have verse 40 in brackets. And the note here, note 4, says many manuscripts do not contain this verse. So if you can compare Luke 24 in the 77 with Luke 24 in the 95 update, which is what we're seeing here, at verse 36, it includes "peace be to you," which our note in 77 just included in the footnote. The 77 text did not include "peace be to you." It did not include "and said to them, peace be to you" in the text. And then verse 40 is here in the 95 update and without brackets. So that class of differences is simply due to the scholarship having progressed and decided that what Hort was calling Western non-interpolations were not that significant that they should overrule the other manuscripts. So let's sum up now. There are a few things I really like about the Thompson Chain-Reference Bible. One is the narrow columns. I really do like that. I like a verse-by-verse format. I like narrow columns, but that I think is because I tend to read the Bible very slowly and analytically. And if you're interested in reading large sections of Scripture at a time, it probably works better for you to have a wider column. I like the font. I like the line spacing. I think it's very well constructed. It's Smyth sewn. It's very sturdy. And then all the references in the side column, back to the index and back, all those I think are very, very useful. There's a great deal of very useful information in the back of the book. On the downside, the paper isn't quite as good as I would like. There's quite a lot of show-through. There is a sheen to it, which I find quite annoying. Ink is not quite as dark as it could be. The print of the red letters here in the Gospels and the Book of Revelation is uneven. Sometimes it can be quite faint, and if black is printed on the other side, it's somewhat difficult to read. The Thompson chain typically does not tell you where quotations from the Old Testament come from. Sometimes it does. Here's an example of where it does, although it doesn't indicate that that's actually from the Septuagint. But quite frequently, you have to find them yourself. Either that or do quite a lot of searching in the back to see if one of the verses listed in the index in the back is actually the source for the quotation. Some more here. So I've included them here in the side contents. Well, I think that just about sums it up. I don't know anything else to tell you about the Thompson Chain-Reference and the New American Standard. It'd be very interesting to see what the edition that comes out in April of the spring of 2019 looks like. I hope it's an improvement. I hope there's a black letter option, but I have my doubts. Well, thanks very much for watching, if you've enjoyed this video, I encourage you to subscribe and to hit the like button. Thanks again.